My name is Jessica Miller. I'm 34 years old, a graphic designer in Portland, Oregon. And if there's one word to describe me, it's too trusting. I believed love meant loyalty. I believed family meant protection. And that belief nearly destroyed me. My stepmother erased me from every family photo. She cut me out as if I'd never existed, smiling at the camera while I disappeared. But what happened when I returned? Left every single one of them silent in shame. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Has anyone ever tried to erase you from your own family? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story. Growing up, I wasn't perfect, but I was my father's pride. He used to call me his shadow, always following him into the garage, helping hand him tools, or scribbling beside him while he worked on his woodworking projects. My mother passed when I was 7, so it was just the two of us for a long time. Our life wasn't glamorous. We lived in a small suburban home with squeaky floors and a yard that always needed mowing. But we had traditions that grounded us. Friday, night pizza, Saturday morning pancakes, Christmas movie marathons. We didn't need perfection, we had each other. That all changed when my father remarried. Her name was Linda, and she came into our lives like a polished storm. Always perfectly dressed, nails immaculate, her smile practiced to perfection. At first, I thought maybe she'd bring more love into our home, maybe even fill the empty place left by my mother. But Linda didn't see me as a daughter. She saw me as an obstacle. She was skilled at pretending, especially in front of Dad. To him, she was supportive, affectionate, patient. But when his back was turned, her eyes hardened, and her words cut like glass. "You're just a reminder," she whispered once when Dad was out of earshot. "He'll never fully love me because you exist." I froze, too young to understand how someone could drip so much venom into so few words. As the years passed, Linda's subtle cruelty grew sharper. She controlled the house, the gatherings, even the narrative of who belonged. And slowly, she began erasing me, not just emotionally, but literally. At first, it was small. A group photo where she'd frame it so I was just barely cropped out. A family Christmas card where my name was missing. I'd point it out, and she'd smile innocently. "Oh, Jess, it must have been a mistake. Don't take it so personally." But it wasn't a mistake. One day, I walked into the living room and froze. On the wall was a brand new photo collage, vacations, birthdays, holidays, all arranged beautifully. My father was there, Linda was there, my half-siblings were there. But me? I was missing. Every photo where I once stood had been carefully cut, cropped, or replaced. I'd been erased, as if I'd never existed in their world. I confronted her, my voice shaking. "Why would you take me out of the pictures?" Linda smirked, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "Jessica, you're overreacting. These are just the best shots of the family. Don't be so sensitive." "But I am family," I whispered. She tilted her head, eyes cold. "Not in the way that matters." The words burned into me, deeper than any blade could. The worst part? My father didn't see it. Whether he was too tired, too in love, or too blind, he brushed it off every time. "Linda means well," he'd say. "You're reading too much into it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, to make him see what she was doing to me. But instead, I swallowed the pain. Because I thought if I just stayed quiet, if I just endured, maybe one day he'd realize. But silence only gave Linda more power. And by the time I finally found the courage to fight back, it wasn't just about photos anymore. It was about reclaiming my place, my name, my very existence. And when I returned, I made sure they would never be able to erase me again. When I was a child, life was simple. We didn't have much, but we had rituals that stitched our little family together. Dad and I had Friday night. Pizza! Always pepperoni, always extra cheese, eaten on the couch while we watched old VHS tapes. Saturday mornings meant pancakes in the kitchen, where I mixed the batter and Dad flipped them too high, laughing when they almost hit the ceiling. Every summer we went to Cannon Beach. We'd collect seashells, take pictures on the rocks, and fall asleep to the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Those pictures used to hang in the hallway, a timeline of my childhood. But after Linda moved in, those photos slowly vanished. At first, it was subtle. A frame would disappear here, a picture replaced there. I told myself maybe she wanted to redecorate. Maybe it was innocent. But soon, the wall that once told the story of my life told a different one entirely. Hers. Pictures of her smiling at my father, holding my half-brother's hand, posing with friends from her world, my seashell photo, gone. My pancake mornings, vanished. Every time I looked, another piece of me was missing. When Linda hosted family dinners, she did everything to make herself the center of attention. She set the table like it belonged in a magazine. Crystal glasses, linen napkins, expensive. Dishes none of us could pronounce. Guests would gush about how elegant everything looked, and Linda would beam like a queen accepting her crown. And me? I was always placed at the far end of the table, away from Dad, away from the center. One Thanksgiving, I tried to show old photos to my younger half-siblings, pictures of Dad and me at Cannon Beach, covered in sand and laughing. They smiled, curious, until Linda swooped in. "Oh, those old things," she said lightly, snatching the album from my hands. "No need to confuse them with the past. We're building new memories now." I wanted to protest, but my father's tired eyes silenced me. He hated conflict, and Linda knew it. One rainy afternoon, while Linda was out shopping, I went looking for an old photo album in the attic. I found it, buried in a box, tucked behind holiday decorations. My heart ached as I flipped through the pages. My childhood, my mother, my life. But then I noticed something chilling. Photos had been ripped. Cut. In picture after picture, my face was missing. Sometimes carefully trimmed out, other times torn. So violently the edges curled. My chest tightened. My hands shook. She wasn't just replacing me in the present. She was rewriting my past. That evening I showed my father. My voice trembled. "Dad, look. She cut me out of our family photos." Sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Jess, I'm sure you're exaggerating. Linda loves you in her own way. She wouldn't—" "She did," I whispered, desperate. "Can't you see?" But he looked away. "I just want peace. Please, don't make this harder." And with that, my last hope for him to stand up for me slipped through my fingers. As Linda's grip tightened, our old traditions withered. Friday pizza nights were replaced with formal dinners. Pancakes gave way to brunch at country clubs. Cannon Beach trips, abandoned for luxury vacations where I was rarely invited. One Christmas, I arrived to find the tree glittering with expensive ornaments, not one of which held a story. The handmade. Ones my mother and I had crafted, gone. When I asked, Linda smiled sweetly. "They didn't fit the aesthetic, Jessica. Don't be so sentimental." But I was sentimental, and watching her strip away every memory felt like losing my mother all over again. By the time I was in my 20s, Linda controlled everything: how the house looked, what Dad believed, even how the family was remembered. She didn't just erase me from photos. She erased me from conversations, from family introductions, from stories told to relatives and friends. I became a ghost in my own home. But ghosts don't stay quiet forever. Because what Linda didn't know was that I was keeping my own memories, albums she couldn't touch, records she couldn't rewrite. And one day, when the time was right, I'd bring them back and remind everyone of the truth she tried so hard to bury. That day would come sooner than she thought. By the time I turned 25, the divide in my family was impossible to ignore. I was still there in person, helping Dad when he needed me, trying to bond with my half-siblings. But on paper, in pictures, in stories, I didn't exist. One Sunday dinner, I sat at the far end of the table again. Dad was quiet, his health already starting to decline. Linda, as always, sparkled in the spotlight. "So, Jessica," she said casually, twirling her wine glass. "Still working that design job? Remind me, do you actually get paid for making little logos?" The table chuckled politely. My cheeks burned. "It's not just logos. I work on campaigns, websites." Linda interrupted, her tone syrupy sweet. "Of course. I'm sure someone somewhere finds that useful." Her smile widened as laughter rippled down the table. I glanced at Dad, silently begging him to intervene. But he only shifted uncomfortably, eyes on his plate. Later that evening, I stayed behind to help clean up. As I stacked plates in the kitchen, Linda appeared in the doorway, her heels clicking against the tile. She leaned close, her voice low. "You don't belong here, Jessica." "Not really. You're just a leftover piece from before me. That's why I take you out of the pictures. You ruin the image." My chest tightened. "You can't just erase me." Her smirk deepened. "Watch me." A few months later, Linda hosted a huge birthday party for my younger half-sister Chloe. Balloons, catering, the whole neighborhood invited. I was asked to take photos, not as family, but as if I were the hired help. "Make sure you get my good side," Linda chirped, posing with Chloe and Dad. I forced a smile and took the pictures. Later, when I checked the camera, I saw Linda subtly, motioning with her hand, gesturing for me to stay out of frame. When the photos were printed and displayed weeks later, my suspicion was confirmed. Not one shot included me. Not a single one. That night, I confronted my father again. "Dad, she's cutting me out of everything. Photos, parties, even the Christmas card. Don't you see?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Jess, you're overthinking. Linda just wants things a certain way." "A certain way that doesn't include me?" I whispered. He looked at me, sadness clouding his eyes. But he didn't argue. And that silence hurt worse than Linda's words. The breaking point came when I stopped, by the house unannounced. I walked into the living room and froze. Linda was sitting at the computer, her back to me, scanning old family albums. On the screen, I saw it, my childhood photos. But my face, blurred, cropped, erased with editing software. She was digitally deleting me? My breath caught. "What are you doing?" She jumped, slamming the laptop shut. "Nothing, just organizing." "Organizing?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "You're wiping me out, even the past." Her smile returned, cold and deliberate. "I told you, Jessica, you don't belong in this family, and soon no one will even remember you were part of it." That night, lying awake in my small apartment, her words echoed in my head like a curse. "No one will even remember you were part of it," but she was wrong, because I remembered. And I still had pieces she couldn't touch, and one day, those pieces would come back, not just to haunt her, but to shatter the perfect picture she thought she had created. I thought I'd grown numb to Linda's cruelty. After years of her digs, her smirks, her careful erasures, I thought nothing she did could surprise me anymore. I was wrong. It happened at my father's retirement dinner. Linda spared no expense. A country club banquet hall, chandeliers glimmering. Overhead, every seat filled with relatives, friends, even old colleagues. I hesitated to go, but Dad asked me personally. His eyes, tired but kind, made it impossible to refuse. "Please, Jess, it would mean a lot." So I went, hoping, naively, that for once, Linda would behave. At first, it felt almost normal. People clapped for Dad as he entered, shaking his hand, slapping his back. I hugged him tight, whispering, "I'm proud of you." Then Linda stepped up to the microphone. She sparkled in her emerald dress, her voice honey-sweet as she welcomed everyone. "Tonight, we celebrate my husband's accomplishments and the family who supported him." Her eyes found mine, glinting, and I knew she was about to strike. The lights dimmed. A screen lit up behind her. "A journey through the years," she announced, smiling at the crowd. Photos filled the screen. My father, young and strong, working at his office. Vacations, holidays, birthdays. The crowd clapped, laughed, cheered. But something was missing. Me. Slide after slide, moment after moment. I wasn't there. Not once. Even photos I remembered vividly, Cannon Beach, where I'd stood right next to Dad, appeared on the screen with me carefully cropped out. It was as if I had never existed. I sat frozen, my breath caught in my throat. Murmurs rose around the room. "Doesn't Tom have a daughter? I thought Jessica was part of the family. Strange she's not in any pictures." My cheeks burned hot. I wanted to vanish under the table, and then Linda delivered the final blow. She raised her glass, smiling sweetly. "To my family, the ones who have always been there for Tom and me. Every single one of them." The crowd lifted their glasses. Everyone cheered, except me. Because in that moment, I realized she had succeeded. She hadn't just erased me from the photos, she had erased me from the story itself. I looked at Dad. For a heartbeat, I prayed he would say something. Defend me. Acknowledge me. But he sat quietly, smiling faintly, his eyes glassy. And that silence cut deeper than Linda's cruelty ever could. When the dinner ended, I slipped out early. No goodbyes, no hugs. Just the sound of laughter behind me as I stumbled into the night air. I drove home numb, my hands gripping the wheel so hard they ached. In my apartment, I collapsed onto the floor, sobs tearing out of me. It felt like I'd been erased not just from photos, but from life itself. I pressed my fists against my chest, whispering through tears, "I don't exist. I don't exist." But as the sobs faded into silence, another thought pushed its way through. If she wanted me gone so badly, why? And what would happen when the daughter she erased came back stronger than ever, carrying proof of everything she tried to bury? Because I wasn't gone. Not yet. And Linda had no idea what was coming. After the retirement dinner, the world felt hollow. I stayed in my apartment for days, curtains drawn, phone silenced. The humiliation replayed in my mind on a vicious loop. The slideshow, the laughter, the toasts. Every moment a reminder that in Linda's world, I did not exist. No one called. Not my aunts, not my cousins, not even Dad. The man who once told me I was his shadow hadn't said a word while his wife erased me in front of everyone. And afterward? Nothing. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, whispering into the silence. Do I even matter to anyone? The silence answered back. One night I stumbled to the mirror in my bathroom. My reflection startled me, eyes swollen, cheeks streaked with tears, hair unkempt. I pressed my palms against the glass, whispering, "She won." The thought sliced me open. Linda had erased me from photos, from stories, from memory itself. And now I had erased myself, curled up in an apartment, invisible to the world. The sobs came hard and fast, my chest heaving until I slid to the cold tile floor. For the first time in years, I felt like that little girl again, the one who lost her mother too soon and was left fighting for scraps of love. But somewhere in the wreckage of that night, a small ember glowed. I thought about my mother, about how she used to tuck my hair behind my ear and whisper, No one can take your place in this world, Jess. No one. Her voice rose above the memory of Linda's cruelty. And for the first time since that dinner, I felt something shift inside me. Linda could erase me from pictures. She could rewrite stories. She could manipulate silence. But she couldn't erase the truth, and I still had proof. I pulled out the box from my closet, the one Linda didn't know existed. Inside were albums Mom had made, tucked away before she died, photos of Cannon Beach, pancakes on Saturdays, birthdays with Dad's homemade cakes, photos of me, evidence of my existence. I traced my finger over the images, my chest aching. These weren't just pictures. They were reminders that I belonged, that I had always belonged. And suddenly I knew. If Linda wanted war, she had picked the wrong opponent. The next day, I bought a notebook. I filled it with everything I remembered. The insults, the photos I'd found cut apart, the slideshow that erased me, the way Dad stayed silent. Page after page, I poured it out. Not just the pain, but the plan. Because revenge wasn't about screaming louder than Linda. It was about proving her lies couldn't stick, and I was done being quiet. For weeks, I rebuilt myself in silence. I ate, I exercised, I cleaned. I forced myself to show up at work again. Each small act felt like reclaiming a piece of me she had stolen. And every night I looked at those photos, reminding myself, you were there, you mattered, you still do. The humiliation no longer broke me. It fueled me, because I wasn't going to stay broken. Linda thought she'd erased me from the story. She didn't realize I was writing a new chapter, one where she would finally face the truth she worked so hard to bury. And when the time came, I wouldn't just return. I would return in a way that left her silent in shame. Revenge didn't come to me in a lightning bolt. It came in steady sparks. One small act of defiance at a time. Linda wanted me gone, forgotten, erased. But if she thought she had the last word, she didn't know me at all. The first thing I did was digitize every photo Mom had left me. I scanned them one by one. Birthdays, vacations, candid shots of me and Dad before Linda ever stepped into our lives. As each image appeared on my computer screen, I felt stronger. These weren't just pictures. They were evidence. Proof that I belonged in the family long before Linda started rewriting history. I uploaded them to a cloud drive, printed copies, even mailed a set to Jenna, my closest friend at work, for safekeeping. In case something happens, I told her with a shaky laugh. She frowned. Jess, this is serious. It is, I whispered. And I'm not letting her win anymore. Linda loved attention. She posted constantly on social media, family dinners, charity galas, holidays. And I watched. Photo after photo, I noticed the pattern. Dad and my half-siblings were always there, smiling. Linda always front and center. Me? Nowhere. But sometimes, in the comments, people noticed. Doesn't Tom have a daughter? Where's Jessica? And every time Linda responded with the same line. Oh, she's busy with work. She's hardly around. It wasn't just erasure anymore. It was a narrative. She was painting me as absent, a daughter who didn't care, and that lie cut deepest of all. One night, I confided in Jenna. I told her everything, the slideshow, the erased photos, even catching Linda digitally deleting me from albums. Her hands clenched into fists. Jess, this is abuse. She's rewriting your life. I know, I whispered, and I can't let her keep doing it. Jenna leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Then fight back. Use her own stage against her. Make her choke on the lies. She's been telling. Her words lit a fire in me. I started gathering more than photos, screenshots of Linda's social media comments, texts where she belittled me, notes of the things she said when Dad wasn't around. Every insult, every manipulation, every attempt to erase me. I documented it all. Piece by piece, I built a record. a story she couldn't control. It came sooner than I expected. Linda announced she was hosting the annual holiday dinner at Dad's house. She invited the entire extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, even neighbors. It was her perfect stage, and I realized it could be mine too. I decided that night. I wasn't going to stay silent, not anymore. I prepared carefully. I printed a photo album, the real album, filled with pictures Linda thought she had destroyed. Me with Dad at Cannon Beach, me blowing out birthday candles, me standing beside him at graduations. Every moment she had erased, restored. I tucked the album into my bag, my hands trembling. The plan was simple. I'd wait for her to make her usual show, wait for the laughter at my expense. Then I'd reveal the truth, the family she tried to erase right there in full color. For once, she wouldn't control the narrative. I would. The night of the dinner, I stood outside my father's house, snow crunching under my boots, the photo album heavy in my bag. Inside, I could already hear laughter, clinking glasses, Linda's voice ringing above the rest. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. This was it. The moment she never saw coming. What I didn't know was whether my family would believe me, or if they'd turn on me once again. The holiday dinner sparkled the way Linda liked it. White linens, crystal glasses, candles flickering on every surface. She glided through the room, her heels sharp against the hardwood, her laugh louder than anyone else's. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, my bag heavy with the album inside. My palms were damp, but my chest burned with resolve. This time, I wasn't leaving invisible. It didn't take long. Linda thrived on an audience, and tonight, she had plenty. "So, Jessica," she said sweetly, her voice carrying across the table, "still busy with your little design hobby? I suppose you couldn't squeeze in much family time again this year." Laughter rippled. My cousins exchanged glances. My chest tightened, but instead of shrinking, I forced a smile. "Actually," I said calmly, "I've been spending a lot of time with family, just not the kind you get to rewrite." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Then the smirk returned. "Rewrite? Darling, what are you talking about?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the photo album. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed steady. "This." I opened it on the table, pushing it toward the center so everyone could see. The pages were filled with images Linda thought she had destroyed. Me and Dad at Cannon Beach. Me blowing out candles with frosting on my nose. Me holding my little half-siblings when they were babies. Gasps spread around the table. My aunt whispered, "Jessica." "I haven't seen these in years." My cousin leaned closer. "I thought these were gone." Linda's face went pale. She reached for the album, her voice sharp. "Where did you get those?" I pulled it back, my eyes locked on hers. "From Mom. From the past you've been trying to erase." She forced a laugh, high and brittle. "Oh, Jessica, don't be dramatic. I only updated the family albums. These old pictures didn't fit anymore." "Didn't fit?" I snapped, my voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're proof I've been here all along. Proof you've been cutting me out of my own family." The room fell silent. Even Dad looked stricken, his eyes darting between us. Whispers spread. She really did erase her. I always wondered why Jessica wasn't in any photos. "This is awful." Linda's smile faltered. For once, she didn't look in control. She looked cornered. I felt a surge of strength. For years, she'd mocked me, erased me, silenced. Me? And now, with one album, I'd pulled the mask from her face. But Linda wasn't done. She slammed her wine glass on the table, her voice rising. "You're twisting this. You're just jealous, Jessica. Jealous that I built a family, that I gave your father children, that I gave him a life you never could." Gasps echoed. My chest ached, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I whispered, steady and sharp, I don't need to rewrite anyone's life to matter. I already do. The silence that followed was deafening. Dinner ended in chaos. My cousins crowded around me, asking to see more pictures, whispering about how wrong Linda was. My aunt hugged me, tears in her eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was seen. But as I left the house, clutching the album to my chest, I glanced back through the window. Linda stood alone at the table, her hands gripping the back of a chair, her smile gone. And in her eyes, I saw it. Rage. I'd won a small battle. I'd rattled her cage. But I knew Linda. She wouldn't go down quietly. And the storm she was about to unleash would make the humiliation at the retirement dinner look like child's play. After the holiday dinner, I knew Linda was plotting. I could see it in her eyes, the fury, the fear. She'd lost control for the first time, and people were whispering. So when she announced she was hosting a family legacy celebration at the country club, inviting extended relatives, neighbors, even old friends of Dad's, I knew it wasn't just a party. It was a counterattack. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, tables glittered with crystal, gold-trimmed menus, and tall centerpieces of roses. Linda worked the room, like royalty, her laugh sharp and practiced, her hand clinging to Dad's arm. I walked in quietly, a plain black dress, my bag slung over my shoulder. Inside was more than the album this time. Inside was the weapon she couldn't fight, the full story, digitized photos, dates, proof she had cut me out for years, and a video reel I'd stitched together myself, the before and after of Linda's edits. It wasn't just evidence. It was undeniable truth. Halfway through dinner, Linda took the microphone. "To family," she declared, smiling at the room. "To the people who have always been there for Tom and me, who represent our legacy. And tonight I'd like to show you all just how beautiful that legacy is." The lights dimmed. A projector screen flickered to life. And there it was again, her version of our family's history. Vacations, holidays, birthdays, slide after slide, carefully curated. And once again, I wasn't in any of them. Before the applause could start, I rose to my feet. My hands shook, but my voice carried clear across the room. "Funny thing about legacies," I said, my heart hammering. "They're built on truth, not lies." Heads turned, murmurs spread. Linda's smile froze. I walked to the stage, bag in hand. "You've all seen her version. Now it's time to see mine." Before she could stop me, I plugged in my drive. The screen flickered again. First came the original photos. Me and Dad. At Cannon Beach, pancake mornings, birthdays with frosting-smeared grins, family moments that Linda had erased. Then, side by side, the edited versions, cropped, cut, rewritten. My face gone, my presence wiped, gasps filled the room. My aunt clutched. Her chest. "She did cut you out," my cousin muttered. "This is sick." Even neighbors whispered, "Why would she do that?" And then the video ended with my mother's handwriting on the back of a photo. Jess and Tom, summer 1997. Proof she could never erase. Linda lunged for the microphone, her voice shrill. "This is manipulation. She's twisting things. Those pictures don't matter. They were." I cut her off, my voice shaking but firm. "They matter because they're real. And no matter how hard you try, you can't erase me. I am his daughter. I was here before you, and I'll still be here after you." The room erupted in murmurs. Guests shook their heads. Some outright glared at Linda. My father. He sat frozen, tears glistening in his eyes. For once, he couldn't look away. The weight of the truth filled the room. No one laughed. No one applauded Linda. All eyes were on her. Her mask cracked, her power shattered. And for the first time in my life, she had no words. I walked off the stage, my knees trembling, the air electric around me. My cousins reached. "Out!" My aunts whispered apologies, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. Behind me, Linda still stood at the microphone, her face pale, her hands shaking, the crowd turning against her. It was the moment I'd dreamed of. Her silence, her shame. But as I left the spotlight, I realized the fallout had only just begun. The night after the country club dinner, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Cousins, aunts, old family friends, even neighbors. "Jessica, I'm so sorry for believing her. Lies. I always wondered why you weren't in the pictures. She made us think you didn't care, but you were there all along. For years I'd been invisible, and now suddenly I was seen." But Linda? She was crumbling. By morning, the whispers had turned into something sharper. People she once impressed now avoided her. Friends who used to fawn over her posts quietly unfollowed. Even at church, I heard, heads turned away when she walked in. She had built her empire on appearances, and in one night, it collapsed. Still, she didn't go quietly. 2 days later, she showed up at my apartment. Her makeup was smudged, her hair unkempt. She looked nothing like the polished woman who had erased me from those walls. Her voice cracked as she begged, "Jessica, you've ruined me. Everyone's talking. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding." I crossed my arms. "A misunderstanding?" "You cut me out of my own family." She shook her head desperately. I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to be the center. You were always in the way." I felt the sting of her words, but it was different now. I wasn't that silenced girl anymore. "You can't erase me," I said, my voice low, steady. "Not from the past, not from Dad's heart, and not from this family." Her lips trembled. For once, she had no comeback. The hardest part was Dad. He called me the day after. His voice was weak, trembling. "Jess, I don't know what to say." Swallowed hard. "Say the truth, Dad. Say you saw it." Silence stretched on the line, then softly, "I saw, and I should have stopped it sooner." Tears blurred my eyes. "You let her erase me, Dad. Do you know what that felt like?" His voice cracked. "Like losing you, and I can't forgive myself for that." For a moment I hated him. And then I heard the exhaustion, the sorrow, the regret. I realized he was just as much a victim of her control as I was. The next family gathering was different. Relatives who once looked past me now pulled me close, apologizing, telling me they believed me. My cousins asked to see more photos, the real ones, the ones Linda tried to bury. But not everyone shifted. Some still whispered that I had been too harsh, that I should have handled it privately. Their words stung, but I let them roll off me. Because I knew the truth. Silence had protected Linda for years. Breaking it was the only way. Late at night, I sat at my desk, the old photos spread around me. I should have felt nothing but triumphant. But victory is heavy. Revenge is sharp, but it cuts both ways. I had exposed her. I had reclaimed my place. But part of me still ached. For the years lost, for the moments stolen, for the silence of my father when I needed him most. Still, I wasn't invisible anymore, and that was enough. Weeks later, I stood outside the mansion I'd bought quietly with years of savings and smart work, a place Linda didn't know existed. As I unlocked the door and stepped inside, I thought, this is it. My life, my home, my story, on my terms. But as I walked through the grand halls, the weight of the past still lingered, and I knew the final choice was mine. Hold on to the bitterness, or let it go and finally be free. The night I first slept, in my new house, I stood in the living room, surrounded by walls that were still bare. No photos, no frames, just clean, open space. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Because these walls didn't lie. These walls didn't erase me. They were mine. Linda didn't vanish after her humiliation. She lingered, clinging to scraps of reputation, showing up at gatherings with brittle smiles. But the power she once had over me was gone. I no longer flinched when she spoke. I no longer shrank when she smirked. Because I knew something she could never undo. I had carved my place back into the story. Not long after, Dad grew weaker. I visited him often, sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. One evening, his voice cracked as he whispered, "Jess, I failed you." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "You were blind, Dad, but you never stopped loving me. That's what matters." His lips trembled into a faint smile. "You were always my shadow. I just forgot to say it loud enough." Those words carried me through his final days. They were the proof I needed, that no matter what Linda had done, my bond with him could never truly be erased. Months later, at a small family gathering, someone asked if I'd brought photos. This time I did. I laid them out across the table, Dad with me at Cannon Beach, Mom holding me as a baby, birthdays filled with laughter. My half-siblings leaned over, their eyes wide. "I didn't know you were there," Chloe whispered, smiled softly. I was always there. And for the first time, they saw me not as a ghost, not as someone absent, but as family. Revenge didn't erase the pain. It didn't bring back the years Linda stole, but it gave me something more important: clarity. I realized I never needed her approval. I never needed anyone's permission to belong. Family isn't about curated pictures on a wall. It isn't about appearances or perfect stories. It's about truth. About the love that survives even when someone tries to bury it. And no one, not Linda, not silence, not shame, can take that away. Now, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see the girl begging to be remembered. I see the woman who made sure she could never be forgotten again. Linda tried to erase me, but in the end, she only proved how impossible that was. Because you can cut someone out of a picture, but you can't cut them out of history. And my history? It's mine to keep, mine to tell, mine to own. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It means more than you know. Tell me, if someone tried to erase you from your own family, would you forgive them, or would you walk away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't making them remember you. It's never letting yourself forget who you truly are.